recognize the ranking member for her opening statement. I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement. I yield back.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Distinguished gentlelady from California, Mary Bono. Gentlelady is recognized.
Chair now recognizes
the lady from California is recognized.
I'm pleased to introduce Congresswoman Mary Bono, former U.S. Representative for California's Inland Empire and Desert Region from 1998 to 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Hello and welcome to Sagely Speaking. I'm your host, Mary Bono, and I'd like to introduce you to my special guest today and my special friend, Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She is Eastern Washington's chief advocate in Congress, serving as a representative for the state's 5th congressional district. Since first being elected to the House in 2004, she's earned the trust of her constituents and praise on Capitol Hill for her hard work, conservative principles, bipartisan outreach, and leadership to get results for not only Eastern Washington, but I would say for the entire country. Now, this is really big. Cathy currently serves as the chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. And as a veteran of that committee, I would say it's the most important committee in Congress. But Cathy is the first woman ever to hold that gavel, and that is very historic. And we're so proud of her for that, breaking through that glass ceiling. So the Energy and Commerce Committee has broad jurisdiction over the issues that matter to all of America. And as leader of this committee, Cathy is focused on delivering real results on everything from expanding access to rural broadband and improving healthcare to addressing climate change and securing America's energy independence. Hi, Cathy. Welcome to Sagely Speaking.
Hi, Mary. It's great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, God, I'm just thank you for accepting. I know how incredibly busy you are, and I'm just so happy to see you and just so proud of you, and I can't wait to get into our conversation here. But as you may know, I've been focused since January on the fentanyl and opioid epidemics. Those issues were near and dear to my heart when I served in Congress, beginning back in about 2007. Now, over the years, the focus on that issue has changed a lot. So, wondering, from your perspective, how has it changed? What have you seen as far as how Congress is addressing the opioid epidemic and certainly the fentanyl crisis?
Well, it's true that opioid-related deaths have been a problem for a long time in this country, but I think sometimes I think it's important to reflect on how we got to where we are. And also to recognize that we have made progress, that there's been a lot of work on Capitol Hill, people like you, Mary, who led efforts while you were serving in Congress, and also communities across this nation that are taking steps to help protect our families and our kids. But it keeps changing also. You know, what started as opioids to help as painkillers and the overprescribing that took place in the 90s and the 2000s shifted then to heroin. It was cheaper. It was easier to access. And then, Congress has also taken action along the way. We passed in 2016, it was landmark legislation at the time, the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, which was providing more support to states and localities to support substance use disorder programs. We followed up in 2018 with the Substance Use Disorder Prevention Act and it was really focused on promoting opioid recovery and treatment for patients and communities. It's also known as the Support Act. So we passed that in 2018. The Energy and Commerce Committee once again has led the reauthorization of that effort. But what we see is that it keeps changing too. So heroin now has moved to fentanyl, and we see today where cartels have not only been peddling fentanyl, but now fentanyl-related substances, we call them analogs, and they have fallen through a legal loophole, which has made it more challenging for law enforcement to crack down on these traffickers. The fentanyl-related substances, these analogs, are not scheduled permanently as illegal in the United States. So there was an emergency order put in place for the fentanyl analogs that continues to expire. It expires again at the end of this year. And it's important that we permanently schedule these analogs as illegal because the cartels keep just changing the makeup of the fentanyl. It's like changing the recipe of the pill. And then it's not technically illegal. So we passed out of committee, out of the House, the Halt Fentanyl Act, which would permanently schedule these analogs as illegal, and we need that to get signed into law by the president as soon as possible. We need the Senate to act. It is a top priority of DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, right now to take this action. But as you know, Mary, there's just so many stories right now, so many stories across the country of lives that have been lost, families who've just been devastated, communities that are broken and in despair because of all the addiction, the substance use disorders. There's too many stories, and we need to take this action on fentanyl. But there's also, now it's tranks for, tranquilizers that are now becoming mixed into the drug supply, and it's just really horrific what is taking place.
Cathy, I feel I know you pretty well, and I consider you a great friend. And I think about you really as a member of Congress who is in touch with your district, that you know your constituents well, that you work hard to connect with them. I'm assuming you hear a lot about this now from your constituents. It seems that there isn't a family who's been hit hard and been touched by this. And I would assume that hits at your heartstrings. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes, it is. There's so many stories. Just last Sunday, I was visiting a dear friend of mine, her son, who was in the ICU because he had jumped out of a building, a 3-story building, and we're grateful he's alive. But he's fighting addiction, fighting some really horrific drugs on the streets. I've had Molly Kane, who's a teacher here in Spokane, testify in front of the House Energy and Commerce Committee about her son Carson, who bought a pill online thinking he was buying an antidepressant, and instead it was laced in fentanyl, and he died immediately. He died the day after Thanksgiving. It's just so sad, and there's other stories. Another friend of mine just was telling me his 41-year-old daughter just died, and she had battled the illegal substances, and had substance use disorder for her entire adult life, and had been in and out of treatments. And there's just story after story of my friends, but also other people that I meet whose kids are battling addiction, in and out of treatment facilities, and unfortunately those who have lost their kids and families that have been destroyed because of what's going on with opioids and fentanyl and heroin and the illegal activity.
Yeah, I can imagine that when you have a town hall meeting, if those things even still exist. Mm-hmm. But as we talk about the issues that matter so much, the economy, national security, there are so many issues that we always talk about. But when it gets to this one,
that's right,
I can imagine that it must stop you in your tracks, because I know it did me. These are parents who are in a lot of pain, family members who are in a lot of pain, and now children who've lost parents who are in a lot of pain. And I think that's a whole nother level as a member of Congress, when there's so much emotion wrapped up, especially when you know this is preventable. So your jurisdiction, I guess, Madam Chair, mm-hmm. is so broad. And I think the combination of your leadership on technology issues coupled with this brings to mind, of course, that so many of these kids are getting these drugs via social media. And I know that you've been addressing this, and Buddy Carter has a bill who's on your committee, along with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But people are trying to do everything they can to fix these, I don't know if you want to call them loopholes, but that a 13-year-old can get an illicit pill laced with fentanyl as easily as they can have a pizza delivered. And that does fall in your committee's jurisdiction. How is it going? I know you've held some hearings on this, but how is it going? Do you think that we'll see some movement here on trying to get tech to come to the table and protect our kids from dealers?
Yes, I do. Because, and this is a top priority for me as chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. It's a top priority for Republicans and Democrats. This is an issue that impacts everyone. I think most people in America have a story of someone, a loved one, or someone that they know that has been caught up in this. That like, as I said, lives that have been lost. Just to put this, so CDC now says over 100,000 in the last 2 years have died because of drug-related incidences. But for the committee, it absolutely is a top priority. Molly Kane, as a parent, was one of the very first people that testified in front of the Energy and Commerce Committee. We held a roundtable on fentanyl-related substances, these analogs, even before we'd actually officially passed the rules so that we could get started, because it is such a priority. So we passed the Halt Fentanyl Act, which is making sure that these analogs are illegal. We've passed the Support Act, which is renewing a lot of the programs that help the states and localities with prevention and treatment programs. But to your point on technology, there's way too many stories. Molly Kane's son, Carson, he was on Snapchat and purchased the pill that he thought was an antidepressant, and instead it was laced in fentanyl. For tech, back in 1996, as you know, Mary Bono, there was the Telecommunications Act that passed. And in the 1996 Telecommunications Act, there's Section 230 that included liability protections for technology companies in exchange for their taking responsibility for moderating illegal and illicit material online. And you fast forward to where we are today in 2024, and the way that the courts have interpreted that language, the tech companies are really operating without liability. There's been cases where parents and others have brought cases forward in court to hold a technology company accountable when, their child has died because of accessing an illegal substance online, and yet they're not held accountable. Just this weekend, Frank Pallone, who is the ranking member, and I introduced a bill, and there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal where we are calling for the repeal of Section 230 in an effort to force Congress to act, because this is such an important issue. And the technology companies have been able to either slow walk or not engage on the reforms that are needed right now in order to protect our kids and protect Americans online when it comes to these illegal substances, illicit activity online. We've had a number of hearings. I've worked on legislation to reform Section 230 through the years, and it's been extremely difficult. And Frank Pallone and I finally decided, let's put a date certain. So what this bill does is sunset. It proposes to sunset Section 230 by the end of 2025. So then Congress would have to act by that time. In addition to that, I have been working on privacy rights. So I've introduced with Senator Maria Cantwell, we've hammered out an agreement on privacy legislation that would include protections for kids online. I believe that getting a privacy bill into law is foundational to protecting us online, both for our kids, but also for people in general, especially as you think about this new world with AI. And there's been efforts for many Congresses. This has been a priority for me for many Congresses, but I'm really encouraged that Senator Cantwell and I, and she's the chair of the Commerce Committee in the Senate, have been able to hammer out a bill. It's called ARPA, the American Privacy Rights Act, that would put into law privacy protection. So it would prohibit a tech company from tracking and targeting our kids, those under the age of 17, online. We had a young lady testify, Ava, in front of the committee just a few weeks ago, and she told about how she was targeted and they collected unlimited amounts of data on her. They knew her and they knew how to appeal to her and take her down very destructive courses where she ended up, being very self-conscious about her looks, her weight, and became she got into these diets where she was trying to live off of 300 calories a day. It became very destructive to her, and she shared her story. It was very powerful and compelling that Congress needs to act. In addition to the privacy bill, a couple of bills that complement the privacy bill is COSA, Children's Online Safety Act, and COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. So there's several proposals that we're working on, and people. So that's going to be a big priority for me over the next few weeks and months, and I'm optimistic because people know this needs to happen, that we can build the support that we need in the House, in the Senate, and get this onto the president's desk. We're having conversations with the White House. And the last thing I'll say is, people didn't think that we would be able to get the bill to force the divestiture of TikTok onto the president's desk, and we just did. He just signed it into law. So I believe we can get this done too.
Congratulations on that. What a huge victory, long overdue. But when I look at the clock ticking, there's not that much time left in this congressional session. I think repealing 230, huge, heavy lift. But COSA is great, and COPPA, of course, is great. And we support that. Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse supports those. But there's also an effort called Sammy's Law. And again, this is the Buddy Carter bill with Debbie Wasserman Schultz that just gives parents the ability to monitor their children's online activity. And so it's not as heavy a lift as these others. It should be doable with this great bipartisan support. But again, parents are just asking for tools that kids can, they opt in, and parents can simply monitor that online behavior. So hopefully that can pass this session and before the election. And then I'm sure the end of the year in your lame duck session, oh my gosh, the things I don't miss about being in Congress.
Oh.
The lame duck session.
Yes.
But let's pivot. First, before we pivot, I just want to thank you for leadership on these issues. It has been noticed. I think you've paid more attention to these issues than any chairman in the past, and I want to thank you for that. But when I think about my friend Cathy McMorris Rodgers leaving Congress, I think it's not a good thing for the Congress. I think you're going to be sorely missed, your leadership, your wisdom, your thoughtfulness, your kindness. What do you want your legacy to be? Because I know how important, healthcare is to you, and you have a child with a disability, and you've poured your heart into all of that. So I'm spoon feeding you what I think your legacy is going to be rather than letting you answer. What do you want your legacy to be when you leave?
That's a great question, Mary. I'm not giving up on getting a privacy bill signed into law. I've been working on this I think this is my fourth Congress. Worked with Jan Schakowsky, Frank Pallone. I've had encouraging conversations with Senator Schumer, with our leadership. I'd love for my legacy to be that we got the privacy bill, COSA, COPPA, Sammy's Law, and a repeal of Section 230. We'll see. We're going to be announcing a markup very soon to keep moving these bills forward. And they often say on Capitol Hill, there's nothing like an idea whose time has come. And just like TikTok, people, at the end of the day, I feel like people knew it needed to happen. We needed to take action, and we need to take action now. Like where we started, there's just too many lives being lost and families being destroyed. So I'm going to keep working on that. I also have some legislation that I want to get on the president's desk for healthcare. It is a lower cost, more transparency. So it would require transparency of prices within our healthcare system. So it would be for requiring prices of hospitals, health insurance companies, pharmacy benefit managers. I really believe that this is foundational to restoring more power for the individual and the doctor to be making the best healthcare decisions and knowing what the prices are, and for Congress to be able to really figure out what the reforms are that we needed and to address what's driving the cost of healthcare. We got to know what the prices are. So I'd love for that to be a part of my legacy. And then on the energy front, I'm really, certainly we've been focusing on American energy independence, the importance of reliable, affordable energy. It's so foundational to our lives. Energy is really, it's not just our economy, our national security, it's our standard of living. The reason that America has led in lifting people out of poverty and raising the standard of living in many ways is because we've had abundant, reliable, affordable energy. And we've been able to be creative and innovative because we've had the energy that we've needed. It powers our homes, it powers our lives, it powers our economy. And so we need to make sure that we're leading in the next generation of innovative and life-changing energy solutions. And so we just passed a package of bills on nuclear, addressing the regulatory and the permitting delays that we see in permitting nuclear plants in America, as well as the advanced nuclear reactors. So I'm excited about that. Working on more pipelines, which is really important infrastructure. Hydropower, I've been a longtime champion for hydropower, and we have a bill to address the relicensing of hydropower plants that, again, has bipartisan support. So, we're working on a number of fronts. And so what do I want my legacy to be? I think I want my legacy to be somebody who really believed in the legislative process, believed in representative government, and worked hard with other representatives from around the country to make a difference, to make sure that we as Americans are leaving a better country to the next generation. I mean, I think that's been our legacy as Americans, is that we always work hard and want to leave the next generation a better America. And that's been my focus as chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, to make sure that we're winning the future.
Well said. That's a huge legacy. I think I might have come up with one answer for myself, but you have so many and well deserved. But when I was the first Republican woman to chair our side, the subcommittee on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And by the way, that had privacy under it. And I had privacy legislation. So I'm remembering we're going, 14 years ago, and it was still percolating only and not getting far enough. What I didn't realize when I became a subcommittee chair was how often I might be wrestling with my own side, my own party, my own committee members. Nobody warned me about that. I thought I would be wrestling solely with the other side. And suddenly you go, wow, I am now wrestling everybody here. And sometimes it felt like, well, not everybody is my friend. Which you experienced when you became chair of that full committee?
Well, certainly, there's challenges, making sure that you get all the Republicans unified and head in the right direction, but then also working with the Democrats across the aisle. I have about 10 years ago, we brought some values into my office, and they're called having fun while we serve. And it's really about building trust. And even while I was ranking Republican, we did a staff retreat with the Republicans and Democrat staff on the Energy and Commerce Committee. And it was all focused on this idea of building trust. I read the book. I met the author on the plane, of all things. Isn't that the way it works? Of this book called The Speed of Trust. And it really spoke to my heart about our work on Capitol Hill, that you have to have a foundation of trust. And that once you do that, then there's a speed of trust that comes. And so I have been more aware and more committed to ensuring that you build the foundation, both in my own office, with my own staff, with the Republicans. But then when I became chair of the committee, doing that across the committee with the staff and the members. And so when we passed the price transparency bill for healthcare, we passed it out of committee 52-0. But I don't remember exactly it was 50, but it was unanimous. It was unanimous, which just never happens. The TikTok bill that passed out of committee, it passed out of unanimous by the committee, 50-0. And even the night before, I had the thought, I was like, boy, could this pass unanimous? And I had to tell my own members, I was like, this is not about scoring political points. Because, it was like, well, President Biden's, he's on TikTok. His campaign has a TikTok account. I was like, this is not about scoring political points. This is about protecting America from what I believe is a very destructive tool of the Chinese Communist Party. And it's aimed at our country. It's aimed at our kids. And, just to keep, and when that bill passed, I remember telling Frank Pallone, the ranking member, I was like, trust is when the magic happens, because it really did feel almost magical that we were able to pass that out unanimous. And even Jan Schakowsky, who in committee voted yes, she went on the floor and voted no the next week. But, in the committee, it was unanimous. And it's hard. It's hard work. It's plowing hard ground. I'm a farm kid, so it's like, you got to plow the hard ground necessary to legislate, but you lay a strong foundation, you plow that ground, and then, you benefit from that work. And it makes me optimistic that even in the midst of everything that's going on, we're going to be able to get more done. And it does also, another one, I think an important point is that it reminds me that we are united as Americans on some fundamentals that right now, some want us to think we're not united on anything, but, we could unite on a TikTok bill. We united on price transparency in healthcare, believing that, we need to get those prices from everyone within the healthcare system. And so, I guess there are fundamentals around transparency, around protecting the nation, protecting our kids. But there's some, sometimes we got to remind ourselves that we can unite.
That's funny. It reminded me of a story where Henry Waxman was on our committee, a pretty partisan guy, and he was opposing me on a bill that was common sense, which we did get passed and signed into law by President Obama. Ironically, it was about protecting, it was removing lead from children's toys and all of these things, Consumer Protection Safety Act, something like that. It was a big bill. I'm just forgetting what it was called. But I went back in the Democrat cloakroom or hindquarters to talk to Henry and say, Henry, I just helped you on a major piece of legislation. What are you doing? And you're right. I think that moment of trust, it's like, let's work together on this. And it kind of took a reminder there, but he shifted. He helped me get that bill passed and signed into law. And so congratulations on your ability to do that. I want to talk about your, serving as a woman. And I'm sure you get the opportunity to mentor a lot of women. And we talk about the imposter syndrome and the challenges that we have or perceived to have as women. And the late, great Ginger Rogers was a constituent of mine. And of course, the famous quote about her having to always dance backwards in high heels with Fred Astaire. I think that does sort of sum up what it's like sometimes to be a woman. You not only gave birth to 3 children while you were in Congress, but you raised them. You're a mother of 3 children in Congress. And then you go to do this incredibly demanding job. I don't know how many airline miles you have, but I left the Congress with about 3.5 million miles from flying East Coast, West Coast, which you do. But what would you say, being a woman in politics, and look, I know how I feel, but I would love to have our listeners hear what you experienced, especially rising to the great heights as committee chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Right. Were there extra challenges for you as a woman? And what would you say to young girls looking to take over and do what we did?
First, I'm grateful for those women who went before me and blazed the trail. And Mary, thank you. Thank you for blazing the trail. I know I was the 200th woman elected to Congress, and you were elected before me out of over 10,000, 11,000 who have served in Congress. And so it was still relatively new. I mean, we just got the right to vote just over 100 years ago. So it's still, it was still relatively new. And I'm grateful for the women that went before me and blazed the trail. But I do think I think as women, sometimes we also make it harder on our own selves, that we are our own worst critic. We're forever just always critiquing ourselves, every interview, every outfit, and I want to, and it just can be exhausting, let alone then what the other critiques. And certainly with Facebook and Twitter and all the social media, you start reading those comments too much and it would just take me down. And even though I knew at times that they were people that was their intention. They wanted to either discourage me or ultimately destroy me or defeat me, whatever it was. Even though I knew it in my head, I would read some of those comments and it would hurt, and it would like replay in my mind. For me, one of the aha moments or a turning point was when John Boehner, as speaker, asked me to give the response to the president's State of the Union. And yeah, I had just given birth to Bryn, our youngest, and I actually thought he was calling either to congratulate me on this new baby, or it was the end of the year and I thought, I haven't quite fulfilled my dues over at the NRCC, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to get that done anyway. So, and instead he says, oh yeah, Mitch McConnell and I have been talking, and we think you should give the response to the president's State of the Union. And in that moment I was just like, well, if you think so, I'll do my best, kind of a thing. And he just stopped me and he said, Cathy, he said, don't overthink it. He said, just be yourself. And for whatever reasons, Mary, it was like in that moment, it just kind of hit me. Stop, Cathy, trying to be someone that you're not, or overthinking, what you're saying or how you're saying it. It was just like, Cathy, just be yourself. And, I went out there and I gave I never, oh my goodness, I never would have dreamed, like back in high school, I would ever do that. And if someone would have told me, fast forward 30 years, you're going to give the response to the president's State of the Union, I probably would have said, no way, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be on national television like that and the fear of something going wrong, right? But I guess my encouragement is, yeah, just be yourself. I mean, people today more than ever are needing the genuine, the real relationships. The Surgeon General talks about this epidemic of loneliness, hopelessness, and the lack of relationships. Our kids, we hear so much because our kids are on the screen. Well, we're all on the screen too much of our time, our days, and people lack relationships, and we need that. And they come from genuine caring for one another and spending time with one another. And I think we're too caught up in our busyness. And so I guess my encouragement would be to just be yourself and build relationships, build the genuine relationships. You, Mary, I remember you bringing the Republican women together, starting the Women's Republican, what was it, caucus, or it was bringing us together.
I think so. Yeah.
We needed that.
Well, yeah, I think we didn't work together enough as women and support each other enough as women with the unique challenges we had. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying male colleagues don't have similar challenges, but we do. Now, these things sound silly and funny, but a woman going on Fox News TV means she's got to be camera ready. She's got to have the right outfit. Her makeup has to be good. A male colleague just straightens his tie, maybe, and runs in front of the camera. So the stress levels, the demands on women are a little bit higher, and that's probably a silly example, but it is one. But I did feel that supporting each other with our challenges as a group of women was a good first start, and you were very helpful with that. So thank you for that. But I think I can ask you, there's so many questions. We talk about national security, we talk about the border, about fentanyl coming to the border, but you're so unique and your experience is so unique. And I want to just hone in on you as a person, first of all. And, you've talked about all of this great collegiality, trust, and you can say, Mary, I don't want to answer this at any point in time, but anybody in America right now will tell you this is not what we see in Congress and that the Congress is broken. And I am going to get a little, rude here, I suppose, but there are colleagues of yours who embarrass themselves on the House floor. Their decorum does not match the rules that we were expected to live up to. Yelling at the president, standing up, yelling. Is that here to stay? Or are we going to be able to rein this back in and again have a House of Representatives that truly embodies, well, Robert's rules of orders, but rules of order, but also embodies civility, thought, debate, honest debate. I don't know if you had the luxury of serving with Henry Hyde.
No. Well, yes.
Henry and I
think
didn't,
at the very beginning, yes.
But you talk about Henry and I didn't agree on everything. Henry was very staunch in many of his positions, very, very conservative, but he did it with love. And he could put forth an argument that resonated with his morals and what he stood for without it being an attack on the other side. Do you see us getting back to this level of civility and to hold the Congress up as a body that can debate serious issues and help the American people?
Well, that has to be our goal. It's an amazing institution. And you think about 435 representatives, and they're people from all different backgrounds, all different experiences. And it's too important to give up on it. It's not perfect, but what do they say? It's like the best form of government of any of the forms that are out there, right? I mean,
it's the worst form of government other than the other forms,
yes,
right?
Yeah, there you go. But this institution, the House of Representatives, the Senate, the Congress, everything that is embodied in Article 1 about we the people of this nation in order to form a more perfect union and establish justice. I mean, it's very inspirational. It's very aspirational, but it has to continue. We have to continue to fight for the House of Representatives and for representative government and for people that will, I absolutely believe it's important, how we do our jobs and the battle of ideas. I think that the House of Representatives has to be this, it has to be the battle of ideas. We got to keep it focused on the ideas, not personalities, not people, there's too much tearing each other down. There's too much everything is about scoring political points rather than actually making it about the idea, the issue. Too much of it is about gaining power and power at all costs. And we have to, but the people see through that. I want to believe that the people see through that the American people, at the end of the day, they know when a representative is more focused on themselves or them as the people and really representing the people. And we can draw a lot of inspiration from those who've gone before us, and we should. But it also is up to us at this time to be the ones that continue to lead in a way that's going to inspire Americans to believe in America. And so those, certainly we all approach being representative a little differently. And I've just really tried to focus in on what's within my control and being the person that I believe God wants me to be every day and not getting too focused on all these other ones that sometimes are big distractions. And certainly I've been hurt along the way. I've had my disappointments. I mean, that's every member of Congress. But now that I've been there this is year 20, how did that happen? It's just really being more focused on, what's within my control and being the person that I need to be every day and not, giving so much credence to all those other voices.
I guess we'd call that character, right?
Character matters.
But
character matters.
Character absolutely does matter. To me, it's the beginning and the end of almost everything. I believe you've been a leader in this regard, as far as civility and grace and decorum. You've been led by example, and I think that's all you can do. But you have been a very gracious leader, and so I was thinking, and I mentioned this to you before we started recording, but if you're going to the convention this year, and you and I can love not being there. We can be sitting in a pool with our feet up on the float or out on a beautiful hike and not have to be at a political convention, which is so much work. A lot of people want to do it, but once you've done one, you've done enough. But what's next? And this is my last question for you is, what is next for Chairman Cathy McMorris Rodgers?
I am exploring what's next. And I'm talking to a lot of people about what's next. But I think what I want to leave you and with your listeners with is that, as you were just saying, character matters. I also believe leadership matters and that American leadership matters. And as much as we reflect on those who've gone before us, Abraham Lincoln or Ronald Reagan and the Republican Party, there's so many who've gone before us, Martin Luther King fighting for civil rights, and that what we do, it matters. And as I think about what's next, I still want to be in the fight for character mattering and American leadership mattering and leadership mattering, and certainly young people. I'm very burdened for the young generation right now. Where we started with the substance use, and drugs and fentanyl and heroin, the destruction that's taking place on our streets and in our families, it very much weighs on my heart. And our young generation, they need hope. They need hope. They need to be inspired again. And America's not perfect, but this search for a more perfect union must continue. And it takes each one of us. As I think about the World War II generation, I'm hoping to go to D-Day, the 80th anniversary. You meet these World War II guys that went on the beaches of Normandy. You've met them too. To a person, they'll say, it wasn't about me. I didn't do much. It's like, yes, you did. And then they came home and they were very selfless in their lives and how they live, but they raised families, they started businesses, and they continued to build this nation. And building is a lot harder than tearing down. It's a lot easier to tear down. We got to build. We got to rebuild the foundation. And it starts in our families and our communities. And ultimately, it's in the House of Representatives, but it all matters. And I'm going to be a part of that somehow. I just don't know what.
I have no doubt you will. I believe you're going to have a wonderful, great life after you leave the Congress, and I know you'll continue to give and to serve. I have no doubt about that. But your point about the D-Day, and I hope to go as well for that anniversary. My father didn't land on Normandy and Omaha Beach or Utah Beach, but he was in the 8th Air Force. He was a waist gunner in a B-17 crew and flew 21 missions over Germany. And he was always my beacon and what I held. So I'm glad to hear you have the same sort of, aspirational goal that we must live up to what they fought so hard for and came back and just lived their lives. And I wish more people had that. I really do. I wish the Congress would just walk down the mall and go to all of the monuments, but the World War II monument, and go there as a bipartisan group and really think about what they're doing. So with that, Cathy, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for your leadership and for your friendship. And I appreciate that you said yes to being on my podcast. So who knows, maybe you'll have your own podcast in the future. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you do. But I really appreciate your being here, and just thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Mary. It was really good to be with you. I'm grateful for your friendship, your leadership, and the continued focus on service. We need more of that.
We do indeed. I'd like to take this time to thank my sponsors, Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, driving solutions to prevent drug abuse and overdose deaths by focusing on prevention through education and awareness, and Map to Action, dedicated to promoting smart policies that keep our communities safe and healthy, and Communities United for Smart Policy, advocating for common sense solutions that promote safer, stronger communities. All of our sponsors can be found on our website at sagelyspeaking.com. I'd like to thank our listeners, and if you'd be so kind, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, reactions, whatever you'd like to tell us, you can reach us at hello@sagelyspeaking.com. And until we meet again, be well, and thank you again for listening.